Hello, this is Francis from McCaffrey's Crafts, and today I'm continuing on my series about Blackthorn and Irish Faction Fighting, the history of stick fighting. And today I thought I'd look at the idea is, did these factions who fought each other ever put their differences aside and join up? I thought that was something quite interesting to discuss, because when you talk about faction fightings, many people assume there's such hatred between two different factions. They hate each other. They're, couldn't join up for any reason at all. But there actually are some instances and times when faction fights would join up together against something. And I've taken a kind of few examples. But before I discuss that, I have to kind of explain another little bit of history about how Ireland was at the time. And there was a lot of violence in Ireland, in rural Ireland, especially in both the 18th and 19th century. And a lot of this involved what was called agrarian societies or religious societies. Like an agrarian society would be a group that sought to ease the economic difficulties of the country people, because the country people were taxed, they were oppressed, there was a load of things they were charged as well, while religious societies were formed to protect one people against another, say Protestants against Catholics or something of that kind of regard. The agrarian societies kind of originated in around 1760, and they kind of disappeared from the scene at the end of the century, and then around 1806 they kind of started back up again, and they were pretty active mostly in the kind of Munster area, which would be like Cork, Tipperary, Kerry, all around this kind of area. I've wrote down some names here of a few of the groups. Two of these groups of organizations where you'd have like the White Boys, the White Feet, and the Black Feet. Now, these weren't factions. These were agrarian societies, and they were opposed to eviction, low wage, and tithes, which are these kind of taxes that people would have to pay. So these groups, they were, you could say, I suppose, quite socialist, I suppose, at the time. They didn't want evictions, they wanted low rate, they wanted fairness for everyone. This was the kind of thing that they were after. You had guys like the People Day Boys. These were defenders. These were kind of more of a sectarian type of group. You had a group called the Thrashers, which again sounds like, a faction or something like that. But no, these were against the taxes and tithes. Tithes were like these rental taxes, and priest dues as well. Like the priest would go around collecting money, saying you had to collect money for us. So this group was about like giving money to any of these groups. You also had a group called the Steel Boys, and they were against oppression of Protestants in Ulster. You had the Orange Men and the Orange Boys, which still to this day, even yesterday, 12th of July, is when they go on their stroll blowing their trumpets, isn't it? But so like it's important to understand that there's a lot of these kind of societies and a lot of violence around this going on the same time as the faction fight was going on as well. So it was a lot of it to do with angry at landlords, angry at the government, angry at the priests charging too much money, for the rights of their individuals and for their members. But I have another book here I kind of want to mention something from. There's a guy called Galen Broker, and in his book, Rural Disorder and Police Reform in Ireland, 1812 to 1836, this guy Broker states that different local officials in the same area might designate a single organization by different names. So that wasn't uncommon at the time, where one organization would have been called different names by different magistrates, by different people as well. So that kind of makes this thing kind of even trickier when you're trying to research it and trying to do it. But again, I just kind of want to mention, to follow on what I said earlier about how faction fights would put some of their differences aside when they joined up with one of these societies. And I have a reference from this guy's book as well. It is like this happened in Tipperary in 1811, when the Caravats, a very famous faction, and the Shanavests, who were their sworn enemy in factions, they actually suspended their faction fighting and joined together in support of the tenants' campaign against rack rents and tithes, or as the case may be, to convince some tenants that of the inadvisability of making their payments. And again, also, there's another example written down here in 1815 where the Ryans and the Dwyers forgot their differences for the time, and they harnessed their energies in support of the white boys against the tide protractors. So I think there are two good examples there, that, you know, if there was something more important for the local community, bigger than this kind of tournament, this kind of sport or faction fighting that saw it. So faction fighting was, you know, kind of a tradition based on some kind of old feud. It was seen as like kind of sporting. People would train, people would join in. There'd be bawdy kind of element to it. There'd be people joining for a ruckus. There'd be guys that take it serious. Women would join in with their socks. But when it came to a serious issue, such as paying rents or something like that, they would join up together. And think about these societies. These societies get an instant injection of members when the faction would join them. The faction were renowned as hard men as well. So it would give a lot more power to these groups in the area. And I just thought it was interesting that, you know, I was thinking of the concept of like, was there any reason these guys wouldn't put their differences aside? And, you know, like, that's the thing, even in modern times, look, you'll have two groups that are against each other, and if a bigger need happens, you can put differences aside. Just like, you know, the coronavirus, that, you know, it shouldn't really be, this is my party side, this is my party side. You know, like, you just say, look, this is going on, it's weird, let's kind of put our differences aside and figure out what the best is based on, you know, credible information, of course, which is always the main kind of source of complaint in modern times, of getting good sources. That's why I try to reference some sources when I can. I don't want to be called out as well. But yeah, so it's just that's kind of the chat for today, and I'll leave it at that. And thank you for watching the series.